Welcome to today's explainer. We're diving into Leigh Hunt's classic 19th century poem, The Glove and the Lions. Well, it reveals how society, both back then and right now, uses grand entertainment to define status and power. So get ready to see exactly how a master poet paints an entire civilization with just a few carefully chosen lines. Let's get into it.
King Francis was a hardy king and loved a royal sport, and one day, as his lions fought, sat looking on the court. Notice how the poet starts right with the king, before even mentioning the deadly animals. Just imagine the visual here. You've got an absolute monarch positioned high above, proudly overseeing his violent domain. He isn't threatened by the chaos down below, right? He is totally entertained by it. It sets this immediate, unforgettable tone of untouchable authority and a really robust, jovial energy dominating a deadly situation. The nobles filled the benches, and the ladies in their pride, and amongst them sat the Count de Lorge, with one for whom he sighed. The words here just perfectly paint this packed, intensely status-obsessed crowd. Think about those ladies in their pride. We are talking about a sea of silk, heavy jewels, and calculating glances. And right in the middle, dead center in this suffocatingly glamorous atmosphere, sits the love-struck Count de Lorge. The poet is deliberately tightening the camera focus here, building romantic tension right in the middle of a literal roaring crowd. And truly, 'twas a gallant thing to see, that crowning show. Valor and love, and a king above, and the royal beasts below. This final summarizing line establishes an absolutely incredible rhythm. It perfectly frames the sheer scale of the spectacle. It really serves as the overarching thesis of the whole stanza, brilliantly juxtaposing the elevated ideals of valor and love directly against the savage reality of the royal beasts below. It wraps up the scene and tells us exactly what this society actually values.
First up, we need to talk about the word hearty. While we might normally think of a hearty meal or, a friendly, approachable guy, in this context, it signifies something much more imposing. It describes a king overflowing with robust, commanding, and honestly almost aggressive jovial energy. When you apply that to an absolute monarch who literally enjoys watching lions tear each other apart, hearty reflects a very dangerous kind of unchecked power. He's basically a force of nature himself. Next is the word courts. When we hear court, we usually picture a quiet legal room, or maybe a sanitized royal throne room dripping with velvet curtains. But this court? It is a specialized, highly visceral arena. Imagine the smell of kicked-up dirt, the deafening noise of the crowd, the metallic tang of blood in the air. It's a pit built specifically for the chaos of blood sport. And yet, it is treated as a formal royal space.
And finally, we have gallant and valor. Gallant means magnificent or grand, and valor means great courage. By grouping these elevated, super noble terms together just to describe a brutal animal fight, the poem reveals a really fascinating psychological trick. The upper class uses elevated language to mask the extreme cruelty of the sport. Think about how we sometimes use sanitized or elevated language today to describe brutal realities. It paints the event not as a gruesome tragedy, but as this incredibly brave display perfectly suited for high society. Let's look really closely at the nobles filled the benches and the ladies in their pride. These aristocrats, they aren't just passive spectators. I mean, why do people go to major sporting events, galas, or red carpets today? To see, sure, but mostly to be seen. They are actively using this high-profile, extremely violent event to showcase their own elegance, their social status, and their immense pride. Attendance isn't just for fun, it's a social requirement. It's a way to prove you belong to the inner circle.
Then we zoom in, and amongst them sat the Count de Lorge. Notice exactly how Count de Lorge and his lover are positioned here. They are seated amongst the crowd, essentially on a stage of their own. They're performing their romance for the most important audience possible. So how does this theatrical seating raise the stakes? Well, when literally everyone is watching you, every tiny action you take is magnified. It completely sets the stage for very public, very high-stakes romantic drama. Finally, we have a gallant thing to see, that crowning show. The absolutely crucial point here is the twisted inner meaning. The upper class is taking lethal, terrifying violence and treating it purely as a magnificent crowning show. Just linger on that reality for a second. They are using death and savage instincts purely as entertainment. It's a profound commentary on privilege. It's the ability to look at something deadly and only see a show designed specifically for your personal amusement. Let's start with alliteration.
Listen as I read this line, and I'm going to exaggerate the sounds a bit so you can truly hear the bounce. King Francis was a hearty king. King, hearty, king. This phonetic bouncing perfectly captures the lively, upbeat mood of a royal sport. The rhythm itself sounds celebratory. It mimics the festive atmosphere of an exclusive event you desperately want a ticket to attend. Next is internal rhyme, valor and love and a king above. Do you see how the rhyming words love and above are placed? Phonetically, it bridges the romantic ideals of the audience, which is love, directly to the king's high physical and social position, which is above. The poet is basically forcing the reader to subconsciously link the concept of romance directly to social climbing and royal proximity. Love, in this court, is intimately and fundamentally tied to power. And then we have juxtaposition. We have the king above, representing safe, civilized power, directly contrasted with the beasts below, representing lethal, raw nature and savagery. The arena physically embodies this massive gap. You have the absolute pinnacle of human social order safely looking down upon the absolute chaotic bottom of the natural food chain, and it's all completely contained within the exact same building. Imagine this rigid social hierarchy as a massive stadium. At the very top tier, we have King Francis, presiding with elevated civilization and power. Moving down, the middle tier holds the nobles and lovers, safely removed from the dirt, showcasing their social status, pride, and romance to one another. And at the very bottom tier, the royal beast fighting in raw, savage nature. The physical elevation in this arena perfectly and very intentionally matches the social power dynamic in the kingdom. Up is civilized power, and down is savage reality. And this wasn't just a clever poetic invention, it mirrors real historical royal customs. Historically, monarchs used these brutal spectacles as traditional grand displays of power. It was a way of projecting their civilization's absolute dominance over the wild, untamed forces of nature. Why did kings need to do this? It was really all about proving they could tame the untamable, essentially saying, look at me, I control nature itself. It allowed the upper class to remain safely, comfortably detached from the bloody reality of the violence happening right below them. Okay, just to set the stage, remember, the first stanza of this poem had us sitting nice and safe up in the stands with King Francis and his court. But as we cross into stanza 2, boom, we are ripped right out of that cozy royal atmosphere and tossed straight into the raw, unbridled danger of the arena below. Just listen to the sheer energy of this opening couplet. Ramped and roared the lions with horrid laughing jaws. They bit, they glared, gave blows like beams. A wind went with their paws. Wow, you can practically feel the ground shaking, right? There is zero slow build-up here. Hunt drops us right into this terrifying display of sudden aggression and massive physical presence. And guys, the chaos just accelerates from there. Listen to this. With wallowing might and stifled roar, they rolled on one another, till all the pit with sand and mane was in a thunderous smother. Notice how the very rhythm of the words mimics that heavy, surging wrestling? It's not just violent down there in the pit, it's literally suffocating.
And then we hit the gruesome climax of the stanza. The bloody foam above the bars came whisking through the air. Said Francis then, "Faith, gentlemen, we're better here than there." I mean, the imagery is so graphic, with bloody foam literally flying out of the pit, and it perfectly contrasts with the king's relieved, detached, and honestly kind of cowardly little observation from his safe seat.
We start with ramped and roared the lions, with horrid laughing jaws. This immediately paints a picture of absolute aggressive fury. But it's that phrase, horrid laughing jaws, that really gets me. They aren't smiling. Their mouths are just wrenched wide open in a roar, teeth bared, so it looks like this terrifying, almost ghoulish kind of laughter. And look at the word ramped. We don't really use that every day, do we? To ramp means to stand or rear up on your hind legs in a really threatening posture. I want you to visualize this perfectly. These are not lions crouching low to the ground. No way. These are massive beasts towering vertically, menacingly on their hind legs, clashing like absolute titans. Next we get, they bit, they glared, gave blows like beams, a wind went with their paws. This is incredibly violent combat, moving at, frankly, blinding speed. The speed is so intense that as these massive paws swipe through the air, they're literally generating gusts of wind. Just imagine the power there.
And that power is brilliantly captured when Hunt says they gave blows like beams.
Now, a beam literally means a large, heavy piece of timber. Think of those thick wooden beams holding up a barn roof. By comparing a lion's paw to heavy timber, Hunt is forcing us to realize the devastating, crushing weight behind every single swipe. A hit from a paw like that wouldn't just scratch you, it would completely crush you. Then the fight gets even closer. With wallowing might and stifled roar, they rolled on one another. The beasts are using their massive strength to just roll over each other. It's so intense, so tightly packed, that their actual roars become stifled, literally muffled by their physical bodies crushing against one another. To really get this, we have to look at the word wallowing. A lot of times, we think of wallowing as a pig lazily rolling in the mud. But here, wallowing might means surging with immense power. This is absolutely not a playful tumble. It is a heavy, surging display of raw, unstoppable muscular force dragging them across the dirt. Which sets up the next line perfectly. Till all the pit with sand and mane was in a thunderous smother. The violence is kicking up so much dirt, sand, and torn-out clumps of lion hair that the arena turns into a blind, chaotic storm. You wouldn't even be able to see clearly anymore. It's just this incredibly noisy, suffocating cloud of battle. And that's exactly what a smother is, a thick, suffocating cloud. Hunt uses this specific word to make us actually feel the choking, claustrophobic atmosphere trapped inside the walls of that arena. If you were unlucky enough to be down there, you wouldn't just be bleeding, you'd be physically choking on the air itself. Finally, we hit the end of the stanza. The bloody foam above the bars came whisking through the air. Said Francis Thun, "Faith, gentlemen, we're better here than there." The fight has gotten so incredibly brutal that froth and blood from the lion's mounts are being flung right out of the pit, literally flying past the safety barriers. And this prompts King Francis to nervously appreciate his nice, high-up seat. He acknowledges the lethal power below and vocalizes what literally everyone in the stanza is thinking. Thank goodness we are up here. So we know exactly what happened. Now let's look at how Leigh Hunt makes us feel it. We're going to examine his specific poetic devices, the tools he uses to build this masterpiece of tension. First up, onomatopoeia. He uses words like roared and thunderous to evoke the terrifying booming sound of the fight. Then, personification. When he describes the horrid laughing jaws, he's giving the animals a ghoulish, almost human-like expression of pure malice. And don't miss the alliteration. The repetition of the wa sound in wind went with and wallowing with. It actually forces your mouth to mimic the heavy, unstoppable, surging power of the animals as you read it out loud. Every single tool here is perfectly chosen to build a sensory nightmare. I also really want to highlight that specific simile Hunt uses, gave blows like beams. This comparison is so deliberate. It contrasts a regular human strike with the heavy, timber-crushing force of the lions. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that these beasts possess a lethal strength that is completely alien to the fragile, squishy humans watching them from the stands. It grounds the entire poem in a terrifying physical reality. But all of this brings us to a really vital question. As a reader, you've got to ask yourself, why show us all this visceral violence? Why dedicate an entire stanza to blood, foam, and roaring beasts? Is Leigh Hunt just trying to gross us out for shock value, or is there a deeper narrative purpose at play here? So, why the extreme violence? Well, the crucial point is understanding how this violence serves the overarching plot. Hunt isn't just writing about gore for fun. He is setting up a psychological trap for the reader and for the characters. This stanza does three absolutely vital things for the story. First, it establishes the arena as a place of certain unavoidable death. This is not a playground. Second, it justifies King Francis's immense relief at being safely elevated. Because, hey, if a king is scared, we definitely should be too. And third, it prepares us for the narrative's climax by setting the stakes to the maximum possible level.
But before we really dive in, I want you to chew on this for a second. Would you risk your life just to prove your love? Or maybe the better question is, if someone actually asks you to risk your life to prove it, is that love or is that just vanity? Keep that toxic relationship test in the back of your mind as we go.
Basically, the social expectation of valor back then meant bravery was just a spectacle. It was content to be consumed by nobles and ladies sitting up high in their pride. Bravery wasn't really about doing the right thing in the dark. It was a massive public performance for an elite audience. Grasping this is absolutely vital to understanding the terrifying choice that happens next. This is where Hunt brilliantly shifts the camera. We go from the roaring lions in the pit to the quiet, calculating vanity up in the stands. Right after the king points out how much safer they are up high, Hunt introduces the count's love interest. Quote, Delorge's love overheard the king, a beauteous, lively dame, with smiling lips and sharp, bright eyes, which always seemed the same. She hears the king talking about this lethal danger, right? And she's described as a beautiful, spirited woman of high social standing. But those sharp, bright eyes, that gives the whole game away. It suggests she's actually incredibly cold and ruthless right beneath that pretty exterior.
Now, listen to her internal monologue in the very next lines. She thinks to herself, "The Count, my lover, is brave as brave can be. He surely would do wondrous things to show his love of me." Notice what's missing? She isn't thinking about his safety at all. It's entirely about his reputation.
She's essentially reflecting on his massive reputation for courage and selfishly deciding that, yeah, he'd do absolutely anything, even some crazy, life-threatening stunt, just to prove his devotion. She's treating his genuine valor like a shiny tool that exists just to stroke her own ego.
And here is where things take a terrifying turn. She makes her move. King, ladies, lovers, all look on. The occasion is divine. I'll drop my glove to prove his love. Great glory will be mine. The trap is officially set.
She looks around and realizes the entire royal court, the king, the nobles, literally everyone who matters is watching. So she decides to intentionally drop her glove down into a pit of raging, murderous lions to test him. Why? Because if he survives fetching it, the clout she gets will be insane. She is completely willing to trade his life for her own ultimate social prestige.
Now that we've unpacked those pivotal lines, let's look at the mechanics Leigh Hunt uses to build all this tension. First up, dame. Now today that sounds a bit old school, but here it establishes her untouchable, elevated status in this court. She isn't just some random spectator, she's a noblewoman whose social rank dictates exactly how she expects everyone else to act around her.
Next is divine. When she thinks the occasion is divine, she isn't having some sort of religious awakening. In this context, it's basically the ultimate PR opportunity. It's a heavenly, golden moment for maximum self-promotion right in front of the king. And finally, glory. Normally, glory means high renown won through some huge, notable achievement. The irony here is just dripping. She wants the high renown, but without doing any of the actual work. She expects to completely hijack the glory from the Count's deadly risk.
Let's look at how Hunt's poetic devices push these themes even further. Take the alliteration in brave as brave can be. That repeating B sound really hammers home her idealized, almost childishly superficial view of his courage. Then, we've got the constant repetition of the words love and prove. By linking those two over and over, Hunt highlights how obsessed she is with testing his feelings purely for her own benefit. It's not about valuing a relationship. It's a transaction.
Hunt also uses a brilliant visual contrast. Smiling lips versus sharp, bright eyes. Her friendly outward appearance completely masks her chilling, calculating intentions. It is such a masterful way to show the duality of social vanity. It looks gorgeous on the outside, but man, is it vicious on the inside. If we follow her step-by-step logic here, we really see the depth of this heartless ambition. Step 1, she acknowledges the prestigious audience. Step 2, she actively desires to test the Count. Step 3, and this is the wildest part, she completely ignores the horrific, bloody pit of lions right in front of her. And Step 4, she aims to claim all the glory for herself. Her selfish pride absolutely bulldozes over any genuine affection she might have had for him.
She dropped her glove to prove his love, then looked at him and smiled. He bowed, and in a moment leaped among the lions wild. The leap was quick, return was quick. He has regained his place. Then threw the glove, but not with love, right in the lady's face. "By God," said Francis, "rightly done," and he rose from where he sat. "No love," quoth he, "but vanity sets love a task like that."
Let's translate this beautiful 19th century poetry into clear, modern terms so we can really see the mechanics of what just happened. Now, what's truly fascinating here is the lady's calculation. Just look at that first line. She dropped her glove to prove his love, then looked at him and smiled.
Notice that this is absolutely not an accident. Dropping that glove into a literal lion pit is a deliberate, highly calculated test. She follows through on her plan, and, that smile is everything. Her smile completely underscores her absolute expectation of his obedience. She fully expects him to risk being torn apart by wild beasts simply because she asked him to. She's treating a lethal challenge like it's just a casual favor.
So the Count acknowledges her with a formal bow and immediately jumps right into the arena. The text tells us the leap was quick, return was quick, he has regained his place, then threw the glove, but not with love, right in the lady's face.
Talk about an ultimate twist. The guy demonstrates immense skill and bravery. He efficiently survives the lethal beasts, proving he is exactly as courageous as she thought. But instead of the romantic presentation she expected, maybe kneeling and handing the glove back to her while the whole court applauds, he throws the glove directly at her face. It is a massive, stunning public rejection, signaling his absolute contempt and the immediate, permanent end of his affection for her.
So how does a crowd even react to a nobleman throwing a glove right in a high-status lady's face? Well, the highest authority in the land steps in. "By God," said Francis, "rightly done," and he rose from where he sat. "No love," quoth he, "but vanity sets love a task like that."
The king himself literally stands up to validate the Count's action. This is the official verdict, folks. King Francis publicly praises the insult, agreeing that tossing the glove in her face was the exact, appropriate response to such a heartless request. The king correctly identifies the lady's true motivation. It wasn't a test of love at all. It was pure, unadulterated vanity.
As focused learners, to really master this text, we need to open up our literary toolbox and unlock some of the archaic language used in the poem. First up, let's look at regained. When the text says the Count regained his place, it simply means to get back or reach a place or position again. It perfectly illustrates just how quickly and skillfully he secured his safety back up in the stands, away from those roaring lions.
Next we have quoth. King Francis says, "No love," quoth he. This is just an archaic, old-fashioned term meaning said, but using it gives the king's final proclamation that heavy, regal, historical weight.
And finally, the big one, vanity. Excessive pride in or admiration of one's own appearance, status, or achievements. So the absolutely crucial point here is this definition of vanity. It is the core, undeniable flaw that drove the lady's actions. She didn't want love. She wanted the status and the admiration of the entire court watching her lover risk his life just for her amusement.
Leigh Hunt was an absolute master at using structure to create tension and surprise. First, let's look at parallelism. Consider the phrase, "the leap was quick, return was quick." Hunt uses this parallel structure to perfectly reflect the Count's efficiency and his complete lack of hesitation. The matching structure of the words literally mimics the swift, almost robotic execution of the physical task. He went in, he came out. Boom, boom.
And this brilliantly illustrates antithesis. Here we see the expected romantic reward, what the lady firmly thought would happen, contrasted sharply with the actual gesture of rejection. Hunt writes that the Count threw the glove, but not with love. This creates a razor-sharp contrast between what was anticipated by the court and the harsh, stinging reality of the Count's response.
Which brings us to irony. Traditionally, a lady giving her glove to a knight or nobleman was this supreme symbol of her favor and romantic attachment. It was a huge deal. But Hunt turns this completely upside down. Ironically, this traditional romantic token is weaponized. It becomes the literal instrument of her massive public insult and embarrassment.
Every great explainer has to ask, what is the so what here? What is the core takeaway, the moral judgment the poet wants us to leave with? Well, the poem draws a massive, unmistakable line between selfless true love and self-centered vanity. Count Delorge realizes in a split second that he was not asked to risk his life for the sake of love, but merely to feed this woman's towering ego and her desire for social glory. True love, as the poem emphasizes, is protective and genuine. It completely refuses pointless risk. On the other hand, self-centered vanity demands life-threatening tasks just for a momentary thrill. Using a partner's devotion to perform a deadly, unnecessary stunt, that is a glaring sign of shallow vanity, not genuine affection.
This specific moment exposes this incredibly sharp, irreconcilable contrast between our two characters. The lady views love as a mere show. To her, it's just a currency to be spent for public status and personal glory, which is completely inauthentic and vain. But the Count? Look, his leap into the pit was about fulfilling his sworn duty as a brave knight, but throwing the glove in her face? That was an act of absolute righteousness. It represents his immediate, unhesitating rejection of toxic, performative love. The very second he realized her affection was just a lethal game of vanity, a mere show, he had the supreme self-respect to discard the illusion entirely. And get this, he is instantly backed up by the highest authority in the land. King Francis actually rises from his seat, swears by God that it was rightly done, and delivers this incredibly powerful final verdict. No love but vanity sets love a task like that. The king completely validates the Count's actions. It is the ultimate proof that true, authentic love never demands a senseless, fatal sacrifice just for the sake of public applause.
Which leaves us with this final thought to close out the explainer. Leigh Hunt's poem isn't just a critique of a vain lady, it is a literal blueprint for self-respect. When love is revealed to be a mere show, a manipulative test of your own boundaries, do you have the courage to discard the illusion? The Count did. And it's a profound reminder that walking away from inauthentic, performative relationships is sometimes the bravest leap of all.